Hi, Olivia. Welcome. Thank you so much. Olivia is someone actually that I've never met before. Most of my guests are either my friends or people that I've met and had an opportunity to interact. However, Olivia is someone that I just stumbled upon on Instagram. I stalked her, I saw her story, and it was absolutely inspiring. So I hope listeners will be able to learn from you, Olivia. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh my gosh, no, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. That was a lovely little intro.
Yeah. Well, Olivia, you are an ex-athlete. That's your identity now. This is how you present yourself online. So, what was your first sport?
You know what? This is always a really interesting one because I'm sure so many kids, whether athlete, ex-athlete, whatever, will relate to the fact that as a kid, you get thrown into nearly everything. You're doing dance, you're doing tennis, you're doing swimming, and you're just getting like I guess it's a good all-round approach for any child. So I started off in a array of sports, as every parent, like, hopefully, if they have the opportunity to, do for their kids. But the first one that I went into, I guess what you could call more serious, was gymnastics. And that was when I was about 5 years old, which makes me feel a bit sick at the thought now, but I was about 5 years old going into that.
And what took from you? Like at 5, that's really early. So, I'm assuming
Mm.
you didn't have that thought in your mind. It's like, okay, I'm going to be a superstar in gymnastics. Like you were just doing it because you loved it, right?
Yeah, I originally went into it again just as one of those things to do, and I got spotted by a coach. And my mum always said to me how she was a little bit unsure about it. That's giving up a lot of things. Really, is that something you really want to do, Liv? Do you really want to go for it? And apparently, I was all eager. Like flips and stuff. I don't remember learning these things, but I must have loved it. You go into any sport hopefully because you just enjoy it and you love it. There was no sights set on anything big, but very quickly, it goes from a bit more for fun, and then suddenly it's not quite for fun, I guess you could say, anymore. You kind of get that little conflicting moment as you go deeper and deeper into one set sport.
So when did you have that thought like, okay, I want to do something bigger with it?
I don't remember having that thought personally. I mean, I'm like 26 now, so this was 20 years ago. However, I guess when my coach approached my parents and said, "We want Olivia to take it more seriously," is that something that you'd consider? I can't imagine I would have said no because I quite like the fact I love to be selected for stuff, and I'm not even gonna sugarcoat the fact, you know? It's such a good feeling when someone gives you that validation of, "You know what? Actually, you're really good at what you're doing. I want more of you." And that's how it very quickly went from, "Let's do it for a bit of fun," to, "We're training 2 times a week, 3 times a week, 4 times a week, 5 times a week." And it must have happened in such a short span of time because by the time I was 7, 8 years old, I was training well over 20 hours a week. So it was very, very, very quick from one extreme to the other.
So why did you decide to step away from gymnastics? Because then from
Mm.
gymnastics you moved towards diving.
I hit a point in gymnastics, and I don't know whether, anyone who might be listening to this has been a gymnast themselves. It is a brutal sport in so many elements where you can be thinking everything's all good, you're doing really well, but very, very, very quickly the tables can turn. And I say back then because I know a lot of things have shifted, especially in gymnastics, or I like to think that a lot of things have shifted in gymnastics, especially after things such as Athlete A documentary came out. And obviously I'm from the UK, and British Gymnastics had an investigation as well. But back then there was a disconnect between client and coach for a period of time. My opinion of the matter is that we were trying to push to be maybe people that we weren't. You know, our coaches maybe comparing us to the Romanian team and how they would train and compete, or how the Chinese would take take their kids in from a very, very young age and trying to almost match that expectation. But I would go as far as saying it just destroyed me more than anything. And the way in which I was treated and spoke to was not okay. Then when I hit about 11, 12 years old, my parents had to start getting involved. And that's when, now I understand, that's when my mum knew that would have to be the end of my gymnastics journey, because the moment that she stepped in, there was going to be issues. Of course there was, parents suddenly getting involved with what's going on inside the gym. Like, that was unheard of. So I didn't want to waste the last 7 years of my life, and I went into a sport that was as close to gymnastics as possible, and that's when I went into diving.
And how did you enjoy that sport? Did you have any big goals and ambitions in that sport?
I loved it. Oh my gosh, what a stark difference from gymnastics in some respect. Some respect, maybe not, but you know, what was really nice about diving is, for me, I had a bit of a head start. You can start diving quite late on and be very successful. And when I say quite late on, I mean over the age of 10. There's a lot of sports where you have to start what feels like out of the womb in order to become successful. But with diving, especially being with a gymnastic background, already having that spatial awareness, understanding how my body moved, having that strength, that power, it really did catapult me a lot quicker. I, of course, would have absolutely loved to have what I would say would have been made a name for myself. And to me personally, that would be being on the GB team, being able to represent my country, and that did not happen. It's not the end of the world. I'm not going to cry about it, but at the time it was a big reason as to why I actually came away from the sport entirely. But diving, I really, really did love it. I really loved it. Yeah.
So what was you would say, the people that were also into diving, or just the feeling of flying straight into the water? Was like, what was the most appealing part?
That's actually such a good question. I've never really thought of it like that. Maybe I was older. I started that sport at 12. I'd grown up a little bit. I'd just come out of a sport which was so to one extreme. Like, if you weren't crying in a session, you probably hadn't worked hard enough, kind of vibe. So to come away from real intense, maybe quite triggering environment into diving felt very freeing. And that's not even including the actual dive itself. Just the environment was, the coaches were still amazing, but maybe they weren't quite on my back in the same element as gymnastics, not as strict. You felt like you could talk, you felt like you could say your thoughts, say your feelings. And I made some of the most amazing friends there. And again, maybe because I was older, I don't know, but you mixed with a lot more people. You were allowed to talk and have fun and not feel like you were going to get told off for it. But I did love the actual diving itself as well. Don't get me wrong, scary for sure. But there's something that I can't quite explain about it. It's scary, but you just, like, it's so cool to think, oh my gosh, I could actually do that. It's so cool.
Yeah, whenever I watch it during Olympics, it looks sick. It looks very scary. So then after diving, you went into cheerleading. And how was that? How was that transition for you?
That was the hardest one, weirdly enough. Gymnastics, diving, individual sports to a T. Apart from maybe synchronized, you do synchro in diving, but for the most part, it was very individual. You still had your teammates, you still had your friends. You went out there for yourself, you would support other people, but you're there for you. Cheerleading is not like that. You are missing from practice. You are screwing the entire team for that day. Someone's missing. Unfortunately, it does bring issues. I also found, due to where I went in at, I came in the season had already started when I very first started cheer. Therefore, I didn't do any trials. Or anything. I was just quite lucky to have my gymnastics background, which helped me. But the team element was honestly a really, really hard shift for me. Not everyone wanted to work as hard, people were happy to just kind of be there and see their friends and mess around and then go home and not give it their all. It was more of like I felt it seemed like more of a social event, but that was the shortest sport that I had done, for better, for worse. I was only there for maybe, I must have joined in like an October, November time. And then my injury was literally within the next like 6 to 9 months. So it's not like I was doing it for long whatsoever, but I got enough of a taste.
And it was a part of a college team?
So in the UK, we have all-star cheerleading, which I'm trying to think. I don't even know what the like US maybe comparison would be, but there's all-star cheerleading in a lot of places, and obviously in the US you've got the collegiate cheer teams as well, and here we have university. You can do cheer at university, but the one that I was in was an all-star one. Similar but different, still have levels. Teams still go to worlds and they still do all of those things. I think it's not maybe as big here as it is in places like the US, which it is huge, but it's definitely been on the rise, I would say.
Okay. So, how did switching between sports shape your mindset as an athlete? Because usually people stick to one sport and, do it throughout their whole life. And you bounce from one to another. How did that shape your mindset?
You end up believing in yourself a lot more. I'm very fortunate that the sports, and it was intentional. I'm not going to sit here and pretend it wasn't intentional. The sports I chose were ones that lined up with what I was good at. And if you are an athlete, you have to play to your strengths. Had I switched into a sport like volleyball or hockey, would I have been as successful? Would I have enjoyed it as much? I'll be honest, no, not at all. Because for me, that's not where my strengths lie. That's not what I enjoy. So I played to my strengths. I played to what I enjoyed. But every single time I switched sports, I added more confidence to myself in the sense of, okay, I actually can do these things. Nothing is impossible. You can relearn, you can rewire how your brain works with your body. Going from 7 years of landing on my feet to now adding an extra half somersault and land on my head in water. It sounds quite small, but you have to literally rewire everything you've ever told yourself. And to be able to do that, obviously have mistakes along the way, you end up stacking basically a load of evidence as to why you can always do cool stuff. You don't have to actually hold back. Nothing is impossible. If you actually are prepared to go for it, you know that you have what it takes to go for it, then there's no reason that you cannot do it.
So, was there ever a disappointment in transitioning or not at all?
Probably my most, I guess, disappointing one would be between diving and cheer. And again, I think that's more the team element and just the fact of not everyone maybe in the team being on the same page, which is cool. You can't expect every single other person to think in the same way as you or to act the same way as you, and be quite a boring world if that was the case. But yeah, I guess cheer was one of those ones where I just didn't have the same love for it. And I think I was about 17, just maybe was I think I was trying to cling on to my athlete identity. I was trying to cling on, and I think back, and me doing my knee and having to come away from sport completely was maybe that thing of saying, you know what, it's your time, Liv. That's it. Let's just call it where it is now. You've done a lot and it's fine. It's not the end of the world, even though it felt it.
Yeah. So, before we talk about your quite dramatic injury, I want to ask you one more question about, so why did you stop diving? Since you loved it so much, you loved the
Yeah.
team, it was
Yeah.
exciting. And so, why did you stop?
Similar kind of thing in the sense of I got to a certain age, 16, turning 17 type of age. I was growing up. My aspiration was to compete for GB, right? I was pretty much told straight. I have a lot of respect for my coaches. Like, I need to make that very, very clear. And I absolutely could not have got to where I was without them. However, there were things that were said that basically made me think, well, why am I doing this anymore then? If you're telling me that because of my weight and my build, I'm not going to be selected above someone else who was smaller and slimmer than me, then what on earth am I doing? Because I was giving everything. And it was a real shame because it did make me fall out of love with it. Now I can reflect and I still love the sport and I would go back in a heartbeat to do it for fun. But in that moment and at that time, I just remember thinking, what am I doing then? Why am I here? I'm working my absolute bum off, here more than so many other people, never ever missing a beat, never missing a session, barely taking any holidays, maybe 1 week a year. And I'm still not going to, what I would call, make it. So that's when I then came away from that one, because I just completely stopped enjoying it, which sucked. But it's a lot to put yourself through when you're hating every day.
Yeah. So has it ever affect you or how you see your body and yourself?
Yeah, definitely. I didn't realize it maybe until a few years ago. I'm someone who wears a lot of dark colors, so I will tend to wear I'm not much of a colorful person. I will wear a lot of, navies, black, neutrals, nothing kind of crazy. Very rarely see me in white. My coach at this time had essentially said to me that I should only wear black swimsuits because it made me look slimmer, and a white swimsuit that I had got for my birthday, he was like, "It just makes you look big. It makes you look too big." So, as much as I was never overweight. Of course, like I was never a cause for concern with my weight. However, I don't think I quite realized that maybe the reason that I didn't venture out and wear cool things and wear all these colors or these shades of white and all of that business that everyone else was is because my link with wearing that color is this is going to make me look fat.
Yeah. I mean, especially when you hear things like that at age of 16 or 17, like
Mm,
you get so easily influenced by what others say that it must have
yeah.
been quite harmful.
Yeah, it probably was, and I don't that was, one of the reasons that I ended up coming away from the sport. It was probably had more of a lasting effect. I think all of my, I don't want to say issues, but what could you use the word? I hate using the word trauma because I don't want to be playing like a victim on it. However, I've had a lot of mindset coaching and looking into subconscious and things like that. Nearly every single thing that came up related back to something I had experienced or been told as a young athlete in my sports. So yeah, a lot of those things have held a lot of weight even going into my adult life without me realizing it completely.
Yeah. So then another traumatic experience came around when you were in cheerleading, right? After
Yeah.
your 9 months of doing a sport that you did enjoy. It wasn't
Mm,
as exciting as diving, but you still enjoyed it and you got to use your body, you got to, you know, do it all. And
yeah.
then you tore your ACL. Am I right?
Yeah. Yeah, I ruptured my ACL, tore my MCL, and fractured my shin literally in one go. Yeah.
It sounds painful.
Yeah, it definitely was not fun.
And what went through your mind when you realized like this injury happened and, end your career?
At first, I think I was in a lot of shock. I know that any sort of athlete who has had one of those injuries, you aren't even really thinking properly in that moment. But I don't think I realised the severity of it until I couldn't actually leave the hospital without the wheelchair. And in the days coming, everyone seemed quite concerned. It wasn't, sometimes when you hurt yourself, people just basically say, okay, you'll be all right. Just give it 4 to 6 weeks, stay off it a little bit, and it will heal. And it was, yeah, it was when both my parents were basically like, this is really, really not good. We probably should get you in to see a specialist somewhere ASAP. I was gutted, but I think I kind of knew that it wasn't going to be great just
Yeah.
from the feeling of it in that moment.
So what fears did you have?
Wow. This is going to sound really, really odd. Probably one of my biggest fears was, am I just basically going to gain a load of weight because I can't do anything? Which I don't know whether people think about that or not, but that was something that was at the forefront of my mind was, oh my gosh, I can't even walk. I had gone from doing endless hours of training to basically needing to be driven everywhere. Can barely walk downstairs properly, can't walk around without crutches, and losing really a lot of my independence that I did have. So that was a huge fear of mine. Another big fear was the fact of I had always been in parties, at friends' places, everyone had at school. introduced me or known me as the gymnast, as the diver, as the sporty one, the athlete, the this, the that. And that was it. That had called it. From that moment, I was known as basically the girl on crutches for an entire year, essentially. So everything that I identified with in every single way literally like vanished within a second of doing it. That was it. It was gone with no intention.
Yeah, I can definitely connect with you on that. The first one, when you thought like the first thought, like, oh my God, what about like my body? What's going to happen to it now?
Yeah.
And I didn't go through the injury that would restrain me from moving, but I just stopped playing tennis. And my thought was like, my God, like what now? I have to like start eating half of what I used to eat. I should run every day and things like that. So definitely when you finish being so active, that goes through your mind. And the identity crisis as well, like you introduce yourself, or even when someone goes to the office like, oh yeah, I'm a lawyer, or
Yeah.
and then if you go away from it, like who are you now, like who
Yeah.
am I now?
Yeah.
So what would you say, how did you go through that identity crisis?
Not very well. To be honest, really not very well. I was so moody. You know, I could definitely use a more aggressive word than that. Like, I was so moody. My mum and dad were just so confused. I was sleeping all the time. I was napping a lot, which beforehand I was never doing. And whether that was a build up of years and years and years of being go, 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 or whether actually it was, I don't know, whether it was just me losing everything that I had and now I had nothing to do. I just slept all the time. I became quite snappy, had lost a lot of control. So I think I really started to doubt myself. This was in the period of time of in the UK, like we have A levels and GCSEs, right? So you do your GCSEs, and I did that whilst I was diving. So I was training and studying at the same time, and did pretty well. You know, on the whole, sport had always been, I'd always sort of taken the upper hand, taken a little bit of a priority over my academics. So now to be, you know, just turned 17, going into A levels, so that's before you go to university or anything of that, I could not use my sport as any sort of reason why my academics wasn't great. So I just felt a bit rubbish. Like I was rubbish and I didn't have a lot going for me. I was doing PE A level and I couldn't even walk. It was so conflicting in my mind between who I was, how I was now within the situation, within my mindset, within my body, but then also I don't know what my future actually holds because I've never thought about a life without any sport in it at all.
So how did you get out of that rut? Did you have any support? Did you do it all by yourself? Like where did you get your strength to get back up and get out of that?
I'm very lucky that my parents are very, very, very supportive and they will always do what I feel is right for me. They will help me and guide me, but they will never push. Obviously, there's an aspect in every single athlete's parent where there is a pushy parent inside of them, and I still to this day believe that. But all they could do was support me in whatever decision I made each time. There was no right or wrong. It was always a okay, let's give this a go. Or, you know, we'll do this or we can do that. Let's try loads of different things. And I didn't have any external support in the sense of therapy. I obviously had physical therapy, rehab, that kind of stuff. But it was, I would probably say, mainly just from me going through a learning experience, me just having to deal with it and essentially just having to figure out what life was going to be and how it was going to look without putting a really, really, really heavy amount of pressure on myself. And that is what my parents massively helped with. You know, they did not push me to get straight A's at A levels, or they did not force me to go to university to do a degree I didn't want to do. So having that pressure taken away from me really helped me to be able to figure out, okay, well, what is this new life going to be? How am I going to try different things? What could I do? And then I mean, there were lots of things that propped up along the way, even years down the line, but they propped up, and I think they've actually just shaped me to not only be who I am now, but also hugely, hugely, hugely help how I actually coach.
So you would say that you didn't feel any pressure internally or externally to find a new direction right away? You took it rather slow
Mm.
and you just tried to fail in multiple different things?
Yeah, because I didn't really have another option, to be honest. At the time, I didn't know anywhere really to turn to be able to push me into that direction. I had gone from doing flips and tumbles and all of that kind of business to basically not really being able to walk downstairs properly. So I had to reduce the expectation. Had I not, I probably wouldn't have felt quite so great. But I also, now being in cheer, didn't have the same level of support from a sport. I didn't have the same oomph, I guess, to get back there by the time I would have got back there. And it was a really, really slow burner. But even on reflection now, I know there's a lot of things that I could have been doing that actually would have helped me a lot more. But if you don't know, you don't know. At the time, I just went with it. I just went with the flow of life and dealt with it.
So what are the things that you would do differently? What advice would you give yourself at that time?
Think a bit bigger and do your research, you know. I when I first did my knee, I didn't really understand, I didn't really understand all this business maybe about calories in, calories out, and I would do things like, it gives me the ick even looking back at it, but have like a protein shake for lunch. I had no idea what that protein shake was doing. I had no idea whatsoever, but I was convinced that that was going to make me tone up and lose a bit of weight. Um, it it did not. I definitely would have, had I been in the position to do so, and had I known about PT or coaching, I reckon I would have just got that help sooner, because I would be so much further down the line. I would have got a lot stronger a lot quicker. I would have felt a lot more confident, a lot more secure in myself. There probably would have been a lot of things that I would have avoided around my relationship with food and exercise and how I use that, had I actually just had someone to be like, okay, Liv, you've been training like this all of your life. This is how we're now going to do it, so that you can get back to a good level of fitness and strength where you were. But also, you can use this now forever. The principles will somewhat stay the same, and you can enjoy yourself a bit more. And I just wish I had been more open to the idea, or understood that it was an option.
Hmm. But then when you were trying to find your new path after being an athlete, and then you said you never really focused on your academics. So
Mm.
what did you try?
I spent a lot of years being what I would call lazy. Whether someone else would say that it was lazy is different. Everyone's version of lazy is varies, right? Especially for athletes, our version of lazy could be only training twice a week versus six. Whereas for someone else, that is really going hard, really going in, compared to their normal doing nothing. For me, I was going to the gym-ish. I didn't really have a rhyme or reason for it. I didn't really know what I was trying to do. I was trying to get a bit of a bigger bum, let's be honest, because I'm a girl and I was in my early 20s, late teens. I wanted abs. Thought about the fact of maybe being a PT, but I just never, what I did was rebelled. I rebelled against the idea of ever being really within anything to do with sport or fitness. Just didn't want it. I didn't want it in my life. And really my pathway from there was dabbling in things that I thought I wanted. I don't know if they aligned with my values. I don't know what my values were at the time. I was living in such a land of limbo that for me it was, okay, well, I think I enjoy that. I think I want to do marketing because that sounds fun. I think fashion business would be cool. So maybe I'll do that. And I think this, and it was all pretty much just a case of, okay, I think I could find that quite fun. Yeah, I'll give that a go. There was no structure, there was no pathway. It was basically throwing darts in the dark to see something that I enjoyed, because that was always a big thing for me. My A levels, my exams, I chose based on what I actually thought I would like, not what was going to get me to do medicine or to do accounting. It was a case of, yeah, I quite like the look of those. Let's do it.
Okay, so would you say that it was a right decision to do it that way, that choosing things that you liked rather that you ought to?
For me, yeah. For me on a personal level, yes, definitely. Even at school, I never seemed to do well with things that I didn't want to do. The moment that I've made up my mind, that's it. That's it. If I don't have a passion for something, I really would rather not. I will give it a go and I'll do it if I have to. And sometimes I do find that even if I don't have a passion for it, but I'm good at it, I'm okay because I'm good at it. So I
Mhm.
can enjoy it. I can enjoy that feeling. But for me, just figuring out the things that I actually enjoyed is definitely what has helped, because putting yourself into a situation where you know you are not going to be happy, you know you are not going to enjoy it, and you are just gritting your teeth at every single turn. That's not really a life that I wanted to live. I wanted things to be on my terms. And being an elite level sport, there isn't much on your term. As much as, okay, cool, you've got free will. But did I? I I don't know. I It was a school away from school. I never thought about not going. That was never an option.
Mhm.
I was going, you know? When I was there, I did as I was told. Always, always, always. So suddenly for me, I had that freedom so I could dabble in these different things.
Yeah. And you mentioned that you, at the very beginning, you didn't know what your values were. I'm assuming you know
Mm,
now. So, what
yeah.
helped you find those values?
You know what's hilarious is my biggest value is freedom. It's a huge one for me. And there's lots of different aspects of that, of course, but it is not something that I realized overnight. And really it took a lot of therapy, mindset work, working with my own business mentors and my coaches to actually get an understanding of what those core values were going to be. Because yeah, I do work hard. Absolutely. I'm not going to shy away from the fact. But for me, I want to feel structurally free. I know that there's a structure to what I need to do, but at the end of the day, I also have the opportunity, or want to be able to have the opportunity, to do all of these different things and go and experience the stuff that I once couldn't experience. Family holidays were not much of a thing when I was younger because me and my siblings were in sport. So now we'll go and do we'll go and do things together, whether it's a city break or even just going down to the pub on a Friday night and making a bit of a routine out of it and having fun and playing card games. And there's so many things that actually, when it comes to values, you don't always have to have it in that moment. There's probably going to be a bit of a gap between what you want, but what you already have. And it's recognizing that middle ground of, okay, well, that's my value. I haven't completely grasped everything that I want from it, but that's what gives you the increments to work along the way.
So, were there ever any moments when you doubted that you've ever find something as fulfilling as your athletic career?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Oh my gosh, I could honestly list off about a million different times, because everyone says how amazing it is. Wow, oh my gosh, that's so cool. You were an athlete, you did this, you did that, you've done this. Oh my god, amazing, amazing. And then suddenly you find yourself like sat in an office block doing like the normal 9 to 5 within the rat race, and you do just become everyone else. There's a period of time where people don't even know that you did sport. They meet you, they have no idea. And you're not going to drop it in and be like, "Hi, I'm Liv. I was a gymnast and a diver. Nice to meet you." You know, like it's really bizarre.
Yeah, you don't really do that.
Mhm. Mhm.
So how did you find that fulfillment? And like what was the turning point for you when you began to rebuild yourself and your life?
I would say it was actually a good few years after I completely came away from sport and I'd done my knee. I was dabbling in the gym. I'd save TikToks or Instagrams and, things like that, or I'd write down exercises in my notes page. Like, okay, I'll do that one in the gym. Like, I'll do that one next time in the gym, and just try out a load of weird things and book onto classes and not really have any kind of rhyme or reason, but it made me feel good, to be honest. The fact that I was trying, I thought I was doing well, but I was actually just trying. It made me feel good about myself because I felt like I was, again, my physique. I know that I'm very fortunate, but I have also, like I said earlier, like I have worked hard for it. It's not just come with ease, but it resembles someone who trains. I enjoyed people recognizing that. Not maybe in a vanity way, but maybe in the sense of, okay, well, my hard work that I've done through all of my years, it is still there, and it will come through even more. So as I dabbled and did random stuff, still eating a kebab on a Friday and Saturday night after I've been out drinking God knows how much, and still having Cocoa Pops like 5 times a day. It was, I know that it was 5 years ago now, but it was actually lockdown that really, really gave me the click. Everything clicked in lockdown. Everything came together from like my sporting world and from my world right now and the reality and the future. And it was within lockdown that I had got furloughed from the company I was working in, and that was in a corporate company in fashion. And I remember saying to my family, again, it comes in with that freedom, right? Because I said to them, I don't want my future to be at the hands of other people anymore. I thought I was set. And just like that, it took one thing and I was gone. And I hated that fact. So that's when I started becoming a PT. That's when I started coaching. That's when I could bring that light and that fire for training and being fit and being healthy and leading that lifestyle and, leading from the front whilst also helping other people to do the same thing. And everything really pieced together. And I suddenly felt way, way, way more fulfilled than I ever had in any of the jobs that I'd been in before. Even when I was diving coaching, I still hadn't felt that same feeling as in lockdown when I decided, okay, we're going to make this shift and we're going to roll with it.
How did you come up with the idea for ex-athlete era? What was the first step in bringing it to life?
I like that. I had already been working with females for a long period of time, a few years. And maybe there was a bit of an element there for me that I wasn't quite tapping into. Again, like a lot of athletes, it's not all about the toning up. There's actually a lot more of like a deeper rooted reason as to what we want to get out of training, what we want to get out of our health and fitness in the future. And I had a conversation with someone who basically said to me, "What the hell are you doing? Why are you not working with ex-athletes? Because everything you're saying, it's you." Like, think about how many people are out there that are so lost, come away from sport, been coached all of their life, have no purpose, have no competition, have no next training session to turn up to. And unfortunately, it is the system where we kind of get just like dropped in the middle of the road and left to fend for ourselves. And that was about 1.5 years ago now. That's when I first made the transition. And one of my first ex-athlete clients was a athlete who I went to watch in the 2012 Olympics, which I was like, okay, no matter what level, we all need the same thing. And yeah, I rebranded at the back end of last year just because I had to have something that rang more true. We all go through, your ex-athlete isn't just always reflecting on the past, but ex-athlete era, this is a new era of life, and to step into that and own it and be in a body that you can be confident when someone says to you, oh, do you train? You can be like, yeah, I do. Or if someone says to you, what did you do when you were younger? What's a cool fact about you? You can say, oh, I did tennis or I was a gymnast. And they can go, oh my God, wow, yeah, you look like you were as well. Instead of feeling that inner insecurity of how I'm representing right now, the work I'm putting in, the drive I've got is not that of an athlete. So it all just really came together, and yeah, that's how like ex-athlete era as that brand was born.
That's really awesome.
Mm,
So a lot of people have, big dreams or ideas for their business or for themselves.
yeah.
What gave you that courage to first share your story so openly and then build that platform that would help others?
No one talks about it, but there's a lot of us that have gone through it. I will be honest in saying at first I felt a little bit weirded out and a bit icky talking about it. I was always a little bit worried that my coaches were gonna see, but that's exactly why it needed to be done. It is a huge missing piece of the puzzle in the fitness space. There's loads of people out there who, if you wanna, just do a generic fat loss program, there's loads of people out there for you. Go for it. But there is nowhere and no one which really delivers that same feeling. When I jump on a call with an ex-athlete and I'm talking to them, whether they work with me or not, and whether we work together for a year or we work together for 3 years, every single time there is a connection that I cannot even put into words because I get it. And for me, it's being able to make ex-athletes realize you're not weird for feeling how you're feeling. You're not alone in feeling how you're feeling. You're not this anomaly. And I always use the phrase, you're unique, but you're not that unique. You're unique to your friendship group, to your family, to maybe a lot of people in your school. But as an ex athlete and as a former fitness professional or whatever sport you're from, no matter the level, you all have to go through that same pathway. So you're uniquely unique, and I love sharing it. I love talking about it. It's all I ever talk about because no one else is.
I absolutely love how passionate you are about your mission and what you believe in. And I think the execution is this is where it comes from. Like you have such a strong belief in your mission and it's gonna take you so far. I love
Oh,
it.
thank you.
So what were the most important lessons you learned from your journey?
One big lesson is you are not your younger self. There will always be parts of that version of you inside of you, but sometimes you've actually got to cut that cord. And the more you allow your brain to relive the same processes, the same patterns, same self sabotage methods, you are going to be stuck. And I don't think I quite realized that I was doing that. And to have that realization, unfortunately, it does require being very open, being very vulnerable, but also being okay with being quite uncomfortable and having to face it and having to just basically go, you know what? I do not need to relive that 1,000 times, but it doesn't mean that because I had those experiences that I am not worthy or I am that person. That was a huge one for me because that was very mindset-wise around everything. It was leaking into every part of my life, all the things that had happened and that was said, it was leaking into a lot of my life. So that's definitely one big lesson. Um, Another lesson is basically just how can I even word it apart from investing in yourself is probably one of the scariest things ever, especially for an athlete who, for a lot of the time, and I don't want to talk on behalf of everyone here, but a lot of the time have support financially from parents or from sponsors or governing bodies. And then when you come away from sport, it is on you. And I know how scary that is because not to be that person, but like I have to do it too, right? I have my own coaches and yeah, it is scary because you are suddenly having to do it, invest in it yourself and show up for yourself. But I struggled the most in my fitness journey, even whilst being a coach, when I did not have one myself, because we live and breathe having guidance. It is not a bad thing to still need it. Everyone needs it. So it's very sort of two stark differences, but they also entwine. One more of like a mindset lesson, and one of more, I guess, still that mindset in being okay with just asking for help and being all right with basically saying, you know what, I do want more for myself and I need someone to push me, but also actually following through with it, right? I've entered for things before and I will put my hands up and say I did not follow through. I've entered for a marathon before. I did not tell a soul and I never did it. I never trained for it, nothing. Whereas now I enter for something, I shout about it because it means that you're damn well going to see me doing it.
It's interesting what you're saying. I actually never really thought about it. Like, we do have guidance the whole life. We have our parents, coaches, and then we leave college and like, okay, well, like what's next? And
Yeah.
when we have to depend on ourselves, like, it feels scary. And no matter how old we are, I think we all sometimes need guidance. That's why we go gossip with our best friend, because we want some guidance from them.
Yeah.
So I guess it's in our nature, and it doesn't matter if you used to be an athlete or just anyone needs it.
For sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
So since you had so many coaches and mentors, and now you have other people who keep giving you advices, what would you say was the best advice someone gave you during your journey?
I can't even think of the exact saying, but essentially, if you don't even try, you're definitely not going to do it. If you don't even give it a go, obviously you're never going to succeed because you haven't even tried. There's no harm in trying and failing because that's so much better than not even trying to throw the dart. If you miss, cool. That's a huge one. I think the other one, and again, more that kind of mindset one, but it's completely accurate, is whether you tell yourself you can or can't, you're right. Tell yourself you can't, you won't do it. Tell yourself you can, you will.
And we hear it all the time in many different versions, and we still, so many of us, fear to fail.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how do you define success for yourself today compared to when you were an athlete?
As an athlete, a lot of it was based on external validation. A lot of it was based upon me looking at my coach as the first thing. Even if I thought I had done a good job, I would have to be looking at my coach to make sure that they thought the same thing, or always looking to make sure they thought I was doing a good job, or other people, whether it was my parents, were happy with how I was getting on, and always looking for what someone else can tell me that I'm good at or that I'm doing well or what I can actually achieve. Whereas now, I do things completely for me. I know there's a lot of people out there who probably could not care less what a fitness event I'm going to do. And that's, you know what, actually, that's genuinely fine. I really don't care whether they care or not because it's got nothing to do with them, to be honest. Now it is truly about the enjoyment I get out of it and the satisfaction I get out of it, how fulfilled I am, what that sense of accomplishment is for me, as opposed to always doing stuff for someone else or for other people. I'm a grown adult now. I can make my own decisions. I will make my own decisions. And I'm secure enough now that I don't need to look to external validation to tell me that I'm like, you're doing a good job. That was right.
And you never have a feeling like you're catching yourself in a cycle of comparison with others?
Yeah, I can do, but also not at the same time. There's things that I have done as an athlete that I know a very small percentage of the population could ever do. And there's ways and things and experiences that I've had that a lot of people would never have been able to have. So for me to compare, and don't get me wrong, I have absolutely had it where I've been the first few kilometers of a half marathon race thinking, why have I got people 3 times my age overtaking me? And I hated it. I hated it. At that moment, I thought, I'm not doing good enough. Why have I got these people who are way older and like never judge a book by its cover, but on the outside of it looks so much more unfit? And they were overtaking me. But what I realized literally from that race is your race is your race. How you race it will be different to how other people do it. And there will never really be much of an end point. So you can compare, you can look at other people, But if you're not happy with how you're actually doing, that's where the comparison comes into play. You have to learn with being content and happy and know that you're giving yourself everything you can before you start comparing to people who simply are on a totally other path, a totally other race, living a totally different life.
You are speaking so many truths here, and I love it. So, how should someone begin the process of rediscovering their identity outside of their passion or career?
Start small and with a wide berth. Do not narrow yourself in. Try everything. It sounds so silly, but it can be like trying different bakeries or trying different styles of shoe. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to become an entirely new person, because at the core of it, you are you. But it's figuring out, if you remove that big thing away from your life, whether that's a career change, whether it's coming away from sport, whether it's, becoming a mom. There's so many times in life where you will have to change identity, that it's not going to be the only time. You will have to go through this again. And every single time you evolve. There's things that I wore way back when you would never see me dead in now. But that's cool because I've evolved. I've changed. You will be forever changing, but don't let yourself narrow in. I wish I had tried out more things in terms of going and trying new sports just for fun. Just for fun, no pressure. I wish I had done that. I wish I had tried other different hobbies. I wish that I had listened to more types of music or been to different events, or even put myself in rooms in different networking events and just get talking to more and more people who aren't just like you, whilst also having people who do understand where you're at, because you get a really nice mixture of, okay, these people understand me and these people have no idea what I've come from, but that's refreshing.
So, what would you say to someone who's like, okay, I wish, and it kind of sounds like I regret. So,
Mhm.
what would you say, how to change that mindset from having the regrets, or like, okay, let's focus on what's ahead of me?
A lesson is only a lesson if you actually apply it in the future. And I've been told before, there's no point in always just going in. You'll never just be able to do foresight, right? You can never just plan for the future. You have to have had the lesson beforehand. Otherwise, you've never have to overcome the obstacle, right? So where's the lesson? The lesson comes from obstacles. And I could tell you so many things where I could say, I wish I had done X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z. But I now know that I'm not going to make those same errors in the future. If I come up against anything similar like that again, I will apply what I wish I had done and actually implement it in that moment so that I don't have to have that same feeling. I've hammered it on the head before it's ever come up again. So it's always using the past to relay the direction of your future, even if it's only small and it comes down to small things. If you're making the same error 2 times, 3 times over, you are not learning the lesson. You are just basically reliving Groundhog Day.
Hmm. So, one of the big parts of being an athlete is, having big goals,
Mhm.
like another competition and, next trick. And
Yeah.
so, what's your approach to setting goals now compared to when you were an athlete?
Still big, and this is ever evolving. I think that is very person dependent as well. And even for me, my goals and how they were are very different to what my goals are now. Once set much smaller goals. I just wanted to do little bits and bobs and just feel a bit better. And I just wanted to be able to go out for dinners without stressing about having food guilt and things like that. And that's where goals can really, really evolve. But starting out small and celebrating all of your smaller wins. Whereas now, oh my gosh, I just will, I've got goals this year, which honestly, they absolutely terrify me. I am so scared, but so excited at the same time because I've put all the work in. I've done all of my smaller wins over the years that have led me to a place where I can basically go, okay, what's next.
So you said so many interesting things today. I think this hour is just filled with inspiring stuff. But what do you hope listeners take away from your journey and from what you've said today?
Just because your sport might have ended, it doesn't mean your life has. I
Okay.
have had so much enjoyment through my life after sport in a lot of ways. I held myself back for a long time, clinging on to me being the gymnast, me being the diver, and wanting to stay in that realm of life, when actually all I needed to do was apply the things that I had from those things in sport, whether it was my commitment, determination, willingness to try new things. Because now, honestly, I feel within myself stronger, fitter, confident, way more toned, way more, really way more of a growth mindset, I feel, as an adult than I was back then. Like, rediscover yourself, try a load of new things. Don't be fearful of, oh my gosh, but I've got to be a beginner. That's the fun of it. You actually have a pressure-free environment. Like, whoopee do, use it.
So what's next for you and the ex-athlete era?
We have just launched a new program, which is super exciting, and it's very similar to what we've just spoken about, called Do the Thing. Because guess what? A lot of ex-athletes want to do the thing and they never actually just do it. So that has been in the works and just launched, and we've got some really exciting bits and bobs coming up in terms of events over this year, which is huge and really exciting. And I'm hoping to make Ex-Athlete Era be a big movement and a community that loads of ex-athletes can come together and know that we're all the same. We've all had similar journeys. We can all relate and be able to actually just relate with other people and enjoy that connection.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you so much. I learned so much from you. It was absolutely amazing. And
thank you.
You are such a strong person coming from such a bad injury, and you're a representation of resilience. So thank you so much that you found some time to join me today.
Thank you very much. No, I appreciate your words. Thank you.
Thank you so much.